Theologian Paul Tillich defined faith as the ultimate concern of our lives. This definition does not pertain simply to what we believe, but how what we believe affects the rest of our lives. Christians believe that our lives should revolve around Jesus, but in reality it does not for many Christians. In our lives we find that many things become the center instead of Jesus. And then it is questionable whether or not we can actually truly say we have faith in Christ, when the center of our life, our ultimate concern, is something else. Even when we do have Christ as our ultimate concern, many times our faith is still immature. It needs to grow. It needs to come to a greater understanding. Our understanding of faith passes through many stages in our life. Understanding how faith develops helps us be better pastors and better Christians. Stages of faith is an approach that was developed by Dr. James Fowler of Emory University in his book, Stages of Faith. It was based on psychological developmental models. Now, don't let that put you off, because what it says is really very applicable to the Christian life. It's based on writings of psychologists Erikson and Piaget back in the 50s and early 60s. Stages of faith cannot be treated as absolute. It's not that everybody goes through them in exactly the same way or anything like that. But it does reflect on how Christians develop their faith through life. It is simply a description of how we grow in faith. As such, it has a direct application to us and gives us an insight on how we and how our children and how our members of our church manage to grow in faith, and gives us some clues on how we can help that process happen.
Faith is our ultimate concern. Faith is the ground on which we stand. It holds us up in times of crisis and gives us a reason to live. Let's picture our lives as having three dimensions. One side is our physical dimension. This includes our bodies and all the parts of our psyche connected with the body, appetites, desires, weaknesses, everything that associates with the chemistry of the body and of the brain. On the other side is our psychosocial dimension. This includes our relationship with society and with other people. The third side is our faith dimension. Our faith dimension supports and strengthens us to withstand the pressures from our body and from the world. Pressures from within and without assail us, and if it were not for faith, we would crack and fail. The foundation of faith develops over a lifetime through different stages. The first stage is childish faith. This is the faith of an infant, of a preschooler. The child believes everything. He sees no difference between things that are real and things that are imaginary. The child's parental figures are all-powerful and all-knowing. The child believes whatever the parent says. Moral obedience for the child is based on avoiding pain and the disapproval of parents. The parents are the ultimate concern for the child, accepting what they say is the source of all pain and pleasure. The child's ultimate goal is parental approval. Everything they say or do is noticed by the parents and is done for the benefit of the parents so that they will like them. Morality is achieved by staying close to parents. At this point, the child does not really understand that there is any difference between the parents and God. The second stage is concrete faith. This is the stage of a child in elementary school. As the child grows, the child understands that God and the parents are not the same. They come to understand that God is greater than their parents. At this time, they understand that there is such a thing as true and false, and real and not real. They no longer accept everything that is imaginary to be real as well. The child recognizes the difference between real and not real, good and bad. Morality for a child is based on concrete commandments. They can understand that they should not say certain bad words or bad things. They do not need to know why this is true. They just accept that some things are good and some things are bad and some things are acceptable and unacceptable. They are concrete thinkers. They do not yet understand the difference between symbolism and reality. To a child, morality calls them to do things they are told by the authorities to do. To obey their parents and teachers is good. To disobey them is bad. They do not need to know why. They accept without question because there is no other truth in their minds. Children know that there are other children, and they seek to be better than them at doing good. Life is a competition to them to be better than others. Relational faith, middle and high school. At this stage, the child starts forming relationships that are beyond the parents and the family. He forms friendship relationships. These relationships to peers become increasingly important to him. Now their allegiance starts to move away from the family to a larger society or group of people, and they start to look to their peers instead of their parents for moral guidance. Morality is based on following the crowd to the teenager. For the teenager, acceptance by others is all important. Spiritual development now has become more abstract. They are no longer just concrete thinkers. They understand symbolism better. They understand, for example, that the Lord's Supper is not literally the body and blood of Christ, but only a picture of it. At this phase, relationship with Christ is mainly just that, a relationship. They can understand the church or youth group as a kind of new family, and the relationship with Jesus is personal. The term relationship with Christ or relationship to Jesus is used a lot in teenage and middle school youth groups. Spiritual goals are realized by joining the right group and following the right crowd. They form Christian cliques to keep them in relationships that protect them from the other cliques in schools or the neighborhoods. They look to their friends to help support them in their faith. The fourth stage is the ideological faith that we find developing in late high school or college. At the end of the teen years, the young people start to lose interest in their immediate clique and begin looking to form lasting relationships and a lasting career in the world. They're looking for careers and mates, and they need a more mature faith that will assist them in that process as they go out into the larger world. They develop an understanding of the world that is based upon an ideological worldview that will define their mission in life. It's no longer just a personal relationship with God or with people. Now they begin to develop an ideology, a theology that helps to keep them straight through life. Moral judgments are based upon this new worldview or ideology, not only what others think. It is no longer so difficult for a young person to stand out from the crowd, just as long as they have a developed ideology that helps to make them different and that they understand that ideology. Spiritual development comes from living out their worldview in life. At this time, the young person typically explores many faiths and perspectives at first. They are challenged to come up with definite answers as they seek for a new mate and a career. Growth comes through the development of a worldview. Young people at this time look for solid intellectual answers that will justify their walk through life. The weakness of this time is that a person often assumes that the answers they get are more complete than they are. They can divide the world into strict ideological or moral lines and assume that people who disagree with them or are not perfect in their application are less moral than they are, and sometimes find themselves incapable of accepting diverse people and ideas. Sometimes they see hypocrites everywhere except in themselves. The fifth stage of faith is the integrative faith, which comes usually in the middle to later years of life. An ideological faith can last for a very long time. In fact, many people never progress beyond an ideological faith. But as we struggle to live in this world, we rub up against other views and ideas. As we do so, we come to recognize the incompleteness of our own worldview, that we really don't have all the answers. We learn that there is a lot that we do not know or understand. Morality becomes more complex now. centering not just on being right or wrong, but also about how to be a good neighbor with others. We seek to live at peace with others, even with whom they disagree. We still believe in our view of God. Our ideology does not necessarily change. We do not substantially alter our convictions, but we have to learn to believe in spite of contradictions that we may not understand. We may not understand why evil is in the world, but we come to accept Jesus anyway and live with that mystery. The rituals and practices of the faith, which have sustained us since we were children, become more important to us now. We still seek for answers, but we're better able to understand that some things will forever be a mystery. The last stage that Fowler talks about is universalized faith. Universalized faith, he says, is not common. In fact, it's quite rare among believers. In this final universalized phase of faith, we have come to embody many of the things that we talk about when we discuss the image of Christ. We no longer struggle with contradictions. Our faith has become internalized, and we're truly comfortable with it. Our view of right and wrong is not simply based on rules or laws, but on the love of God and on service to others. Spirituality at this point is a natural part of our life. We see Christ behind everything that we do and see. We see him behind everything that happens to us. The presence of God is with us at least most of the time, if not all the time. The rest of our earthly life, comes across as a metaphor for greater heavenly realities. At this time, we truly become a walking representative of the love of God. People around us are attracted to Christ by the lives we live, and we are free to be enriched by the people around us. Fowler calls this a zone of liberation that comes from those who come to this point of life, who have universalized their faith and see the imitation of Christ in their lives.
In this last stage of faith, we come close to the goal which we have been seeking for our whole life, which is the imitation of Christ. None of us will ever fully achieve that in this lifetime, but we can come a lot closer than we are right now. The imitation of Christ is not fully achievable now, but we can be closer. As we live in the love of God and the love of others, we become more and more like him. For a minister or pastor, this is not only our final stage, but it is what our congregations have been wanting for us all along. That we would represent Christ to them, to be a true and living representative of his love and his power. Faith is the key. Not abstract faith, not just simply in relationship to other people, not ideological faith, but real faith where Christ is our ultimate and real goal. That is what it means to live fully in the imitation of Jesus.